Imagine walking into a supermarket in an English speaking country and you can't find the milk. You don't understand what the cashier just asked you, and you have absolutely no idea how to ask someone for help. Sounds stressful, right? Well, by the end of today's episode, that entire situation is going to feel easy.
Okay, I actually remember feeling exactly like that the first time I went shopping abroad. I just stood there in the cereal aisle, completely frozen, not knowing what to say to anyone.
That's such a common experience, and honestly, shopping is one of those everyday situations that beginners need the most because you can't avoid it. Everyone needs food. Everyone needs to buy things. So today we're covering every single step, from walking into the supermarket to wandering around the mall, all the way to checkout.
I love that we're covering the whole journey, not just one part, because shopping really does have different stages and each one needs different phrases.
Exactly. So before we jump in, let's say a proper hello to everyone listening. Welcome back, wherever you're tuning in from today, whether you're actually walking through a store right now with your earphones in or just relaxing at home.
I'm Lily.
And I'm Sam, and today we're doing something a little different. Instead of just one phrase list, we're walking through an entire shopping trip from start to finish, step by step.
I think this is going to be so useful, especially for beginners, because shopping vocabulary is one of those things you genuinely use almost every single day.
Exactly. So let's start at the very beginning, walking into the supermarket. And the first thing you'll often hear from an employee is, "Hi, how are you today?" Or sometimes, "Can I help you find anything?"
And for beginners, that second question is actually really important to recognize because if you don't need help, you just say, "No thanks, I'm just looking." And that's a completely normal, polite response.
Right. And that phrase, "I'm just looking," is honestly one of the most useful phrases in all of shopping English because it politely tells someone you don't need help right now without sounding rude at all.
But if you do need help, here's a phrase you'll want to remember. Excuse me, do you know where I can find the milk?
That structure works for literally anything. You could swap milk for bread, eggs, rice, or whatever you're looking for. And it's polite, clear, and easy to say even if you're nervous.
I actually still use that exact phrase all the time, even now, because supermarkets rearrange their shelves constantly, and I never know where anything is anymore.
Honestly, same. I feel like every time I go to my local store, they've moved something completely random and I have to ask an employee where the pasta went.
All right, so once you find the section you need, sometimes you're not sure which product to pick. And a really useful phrase there is, which one would you recommend?
That phrase works so well whether you're asking an employee about two different brands of coffee or asking a friend which cereal tastes better. It's simple, natural, and gets you a helpful answer.
Exactly. And sometimes you might also hear the question, are you looking for anything specific or just browsing? Which is basically another version of that earlier greeting.
Right, and again, your answer can just be, "Just browsing, thanks," which keeps things light and easy.
All right, now let's say you're looking at a product and you're not sure about the price, or maybe there's no price tag visible. What would you say?
That's a great question, and honestly, the simplest phrase is just, "How much is this?" Or if you're holding something specific, "How much does this cost?"
Both of those work perfectly. And here's a fun fact, actually. In a lot of English-speaking countries, prices are almost always clearly labeled. So you'll usually only need this phrase for things without visible tags, like items at a deli counter or a bakery section.
That's such a good point. And speaking of the deli counter, that's actually a whole different mini conversation because there you're often serving yourself through a person, not just grabbing something off a shelf.
Right, so if you're at a deli counter, you might say, could I get a quarter pound of turkey, please? Or could I have 2 slices of cheese?
And after they hand it to you, they'll almost always ask, "Anything else?" And if you're done, you simply say, "No, that's all, thank you," which is such a natural, easy way to end that interaction.
I remember the first time I ordered at a deli counter, I panicked a little because I didn't know how to specify the amount. But honestly, once you learn just a few phrases like a quarter pound or a couple of slices, it becomes so much easier.
Exactly. And that's honestly the beauty of learning shopping vocabulary. Once you know the pattern, you can use it in almost any similar situation.
All right, now let's move from the supermarket to the mall because shopping there involves a slightly different set of phrases, especially when you're trying on clothes.
Right. So imagine you walk into a clothing store and an employee asks, "Are you finding everything okay?" Which is basically their version of asking if you need help.
And if you actually do need something, a really useful phrase is, do you have this in a smaller size? Or do you have this in a different color?
Those two phrases alone will get you incredibly far in almost any clothing store because sizes and colors are honestly the two most common things people ask about.
And if you want to try something on, you simply ask, where are the fitting rooms? Or, can I try this on?
I actually have a funny story about fitting rooms. The first time I traveled abroad, I completely mixed up the word fitting room with something else and ended up wandering around confused for almost 5 minutes before finally asking an employee directly.
That's honestly such a relatable mistake because clothing vocabulary can be tricky, especially with words that don't translate directly between languages.
Exactly. So once you're in the fitting room and let's say something doesn't fit quite right, you might come back out and say, "Do you have this in a larger size?" Or "This is a bit too tight."
And if everything fits perfectly and you're happy with it, you simply say, I'll take this one, which is such a natural, confident way to confirm your decision.
Right. And that phrase, "I'll take this," actually works in almost any shopping situation, not just clothing. You can use it for groceries, electronics, gifts, basically anything you're deciding to buy.
That's such a versatile phrase, and honestly, learning phrases that apply broadly like that is one of the smartest ways to build your vocabulary quickly.
Before we move on to checkout, let's take a quick moment because if you're finding this episode useful so far, hitting that subscribe button on Mr. English Today genuinely helps us create more lessons like this every single week.
Seriously, it only takes a couple of seconds and it really does make a difference for us. So thank you if you've already subscribed, and if you haven't, now's the perfect time.
All right, now let's move to the final stage of shopping, checkout, because this part actually has its own specific vocabulary that a lot of beginners aren't familiar with.
Right, so once you're at the register, the cashier will often start with something like, did you find everything you were looking for?
And your answer is usually just a simple, "Yes, thank you." Or if something was missing, you could say, "Actually, I couldn't find the eggs," which naturally continues the conversation.
After that, they'll usually ask, how would you like to pay? Or sometimes just cash or card.
And your response is incredibly simple. You just say, "Card, please," or "I'll pay in cash," depending on how you're paying that day.
Sometimes, especially with card payments, they might ask, would you like a receipt? And you simply respond, yes, please, or no, thank you.
That's such a small phrase, but honestly, so many beginners freeze up when they hear it for the first time simply because they've never specifically practiced that exact question before.
Exactly. And that's really the whole point of today's episode, preparing you for these specific little moments so nothing catches you off guard.
Now, let's say you're buying groceries and they ask, "Do you need any bags today?" What would you say?
That's such an important question these days, especially since a lot of places now charge for bags or encourage reusable ones. So a good response could be, yes, one bag, please, or no, I brought my own.
That's actually such an interesting cultural point too, because in a lot of English-speaking countries now, bringing your own reusable bag has become really common. So don't be surprised if you get asked that question almost every single time.
That's a great tip, and honestly, something a lot of language courses don't even mention because it's such a modern, practical detail.
Exactly. And finally, once everything is paid for, the cashier will usually finish with something like, "Have a great day," and you simply respond, "You too, thanks."
That small exchange might seem tiny, but it's honestly one of those little social moments that make you feel so much more confident and natural once you know exactly how to respond.
Absolutely. And let's do a quick recap now of everything we covered today, because there was a lot of really useful vocabulary in this episode.
We started with supermarket phrases like, I'm just looking, excuse me, do you know where I can find the milk? Which one would you recommend? And deli phrases like, could I get a quarter pound of turkey, please?
Then we moved to the mall with phrases like, "Do you have this in a smaller size?" "Where are the fitting rooms?" and "I'll take this one."
And finally, we covered checkout phrases like cash or card, would you like a receipt, do you need any bags today, and ending with that simple, friendly exchange, have a great day, you too.
Honestly, if you take just 5 or 6 of these phrases and start using them the next time you go shopping, you're going to feel so much more confident and prepared.
So here's a question for all of you listening. Which part of shopping do you personally find the most stressful? The supermarket, the mall, or checkout? Let us know in the comments. We genuinely love to hear your answers.
And if today's episode helped you even a little, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with a friend who's nervous about shopping in English.
All right, everyone, that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for spending this time learning with us. We really do appreciate each and every one of you.
Go practice these phrases next time you're out shopping. You've got this, and we'll catch you in the next one.